Hi, 7th grade friends. It's Miss Wanda from Waterfront Botanical Gardens. And today I'm doing the Elk Everywhere activity from the JCPS Choice Board. Today we're going to be talking about how energy and matter move through a food web. Now, I bet at some time in your school career, you've learned a little bit about a simple food chain. A simple food chain is usually a diagram that shows a sun, and the sun is giving its energy to some kind of a plant. That plant is giving its energy to some type of herbivore or omnivore, and that herbivore or omnivore is giving its energy to a carnivore or another omnivore. So in our food chain that I drew here, we have a sun. It's giving its energy to some grass or a plant. That grass is giving its energy to a mouse, and then the mouse is giving its energy to a snake. When we're talking about food webs and food chains, we usually use the word producer instead of plant. Plants are called producers because they create their own sugar using energy from the sun through photosynthesis. Animals that eat are called consumers, and the first consumer in a food chain or food web is called the primary consumer or the first eater. The second eater in a food chain or food web is called the secondary consumer, and in our food chain and food that we showed a second ago, the simple food chain, it was a snake. So secondary consumer, the second eater. But even though a lot of science books, a lot of science lessons use food chains to teach how energy moves through an ecosystem, they actually aren't very effective because food chains are a little bit too simple and don't really represent how energy moves through an ecosystem. And the reason for that is if you think about producers, if you think about plants, there are more different kinds of plants than just grass or a single plant in an ecosystem. There are many different kinds of grass. There are flowers. There are many different kinds of flowers and many different kinds of trees. So with producers, there's lots of different kinds of producers, and there's also different types of consumers. There's not just mice that are primary consumers in an ecosystem. We also have squirrels and rabbits, and I bet you guys can think of a few more. And of course, there's many different kinds of secondary or second eaters, and even third eaters or tertiary consumers. So just a simple linear food web is a little bit too simple. An ecosystem is definitely more complicated than that. So the definition of a food web is a diagram that shows the interconnection of many food chains within an ecosystem. Not just one linear food chain, but many food chains together. Today I'm going to do an example of a food chain. The example I'm going to give you is from an African grassland or African savanna food web. I like to use this example because it reminds me a lot of the Circle of Life from a very popular Disney animated film. Something to remember when you're looking at a food web diagram is that the arrows in a food web represent the movement of matter and energy. They always point towards what's giving the energy to what's getting the energy. Like, for instance, this hamburger that is giving its energy to me, Miss Wanda. You could also think about it as this flower. The arrow moves from the flower towards the butterfly. The flower says, "I'm giving you my energy." And the butterfly says, "Thanks." It points towards what is getting the energy. All right, so let's get started on our model of our food web today. So I've created a little diagram. I'm going to move my camera back so you guys can see a little bit better. Okay. That looks about right. So we're going to start off today with our first level of our food web. The sun gives its energy to all producers, stargrass and acacia trees. Stargrass and acacia trees are two different kinds of producers or plants that live in the African grasslands. So we're starting off today with the sun. I'm going to put that up here at the top. Alrighty. And then we're going to put our stargrass here. See, the arrow points from the sun, which is giving the energy, to the grass, which is getting the energy. And then we're going to put acacia trees on this side. Our next card says that acacia trees give their energy and matter. So their energy that they've created and their matter. Remember, matter is anything that takes up space. So that matter itself is being transferred from that tree. And as the elephant eats it, it gets energy and it moves into the elephant. So here's our primary consumer, our elephant, or our elephants, their whole population of elephants. They are our primary consumers. They are eating first from the acacia trees. Elephants give their matter and energy to lions. Now, it is very hard for any animal to consume or to eat an elephant, but lions do work in social groups with many lionesses hunting together. So if they find an elephant that is small enough that they can take down, or if it's an older, maybe sicker elephant, it might be a little bit easier. But the elephant, the primary consumer, giving its energy, there's our arrow there, giving its energy to the lion. All right, we're going to go back up to stargrass, one of our producers there at the top. Remember, the sun gave its energy to the grass. It says stargrass gives matter and energy to warthogs, gazelles, ants, and elephants. So the stargrass gives its energy to warthogs. We're going to put this guy here. So the grass, you got to know that those red arrows are pointing to these boxes. I know it might be kind of hard to see. And then the grass gives its energy to the gazelles and also to the ants. Okay. Next up, the ants give their matter and energy to aardvarks. Have you ever seen an aardvark before? Aardvarks are African animals from the African grasslands. And if you haven't seen one in real life, once all of this crazy quarantine stuff is over, you and your family should take a trip up to the Cincinnati Zoo or the Nashville Zoo to see their aardvarks. Aardvarks are really, really cool to see in person. All right, so we're going to put this aardvark here. The ants give the energy. There's the arrow giving its energy to the aardvarks. Aardvarks give their matter and energy to lions and wild dogs. Well, we already have our lion here. Here's our aardvark. He's giving his energy to the lion, and he's also giving his energy to a wild dog. So wild dogs are pack animals. If you don't know anything about wild dogs, they're a pack animal that live in the grasslands of Africa. Obviously, a lot like a dog, might remind you a little bit of like a hyena sort of, but a wild dog. Gazelles give their matter and energy to lions. Oh, there's an arrow under here, pointing over here to lions and wild dogs. Okay. Warthogs give matter and energy to lions and wild dogs too. There's our warthog here, giving their energy with the arrows to the wild dogs and the lions. And then finally, now not all food webs will include decomposers. But a lot of food webs do it. And your activity today, the Elk Everywhere activity from the choice board, definitely asks you to include a decomposer. So I went ahead and included one today. But decomposers break down decaying organic matter and replace nutrients in the soil for producers. So our decomposer that I put out here today is an earthworm. So earthworms eat dirt or soil. They consume the dirt and soil, and then that dirt and soil move through their body, and then they put the nutrients back into the soil. So when an animal dies, like a lion or a wild dog or an aardvark or ants or gazelles or warthogs or elephants, when they die, their bodies become part of the earth and part of the soil. They decay and they rot and they become part of the soil. The worms eat the soil and they take the nutrients that's from their body, and when they poop or go to the bathroom, the soil that's replenished gives nutrients all the way back up here. And it's really hard to see my arrows, but I drew some arrows in here. Their nutrients are going to go all the way back up here to the stargrass and to the acacia trees. So decomposers, once again, they break down the decaying organic matter and replace nutrients in the soils for those producers, our grass and our trees. Now, don't forget that this all started up here with the sun. I know that I haven't done the best job of getting my whole food web. So as we look at this, guys, you can tell that this is pretty complicated. It's hard for me to get it all in the same shot with my camera phone here. It is very, very complicated. It's not just one linear line. There are many different kinds of plants. There are many different kinds of animals. And with decomposers, we could have used an earthworm here, but I could have put a mushroom here or some sort of a bacteria that could have been used as a decomposer as well. Those all help break down the nutrients in the soil. So at this point, after we've kind of done our food web with the arrows and the producers and the primary consumers and the secondary consumers and the decomposers, you might be asking yourself, isn't this activity called elk everywhere? Where in the world are the elk? Well, the answer is that you guys are supposed to create your own food web. So according to the JCPS Choice Board, you're supposed to create a food web, a lot like the Grasslands food web that I created. That instead of being a grasslands food web, you're actually creating a temperate deciduous forest food web that has oak trees, grasses, rabbits, deer, birds, and worms. And you can probably add some more organisms in there as well. And then you're also, in addition to creating that food web, supposed to answer the question, how would a change in a population affect the flow of energy in an ecosystem? How would a change in the population affect the flow of energy in an ecosystem? So you can think about that for a second. If you think about if, for instance, all the acacia trees disappeared, we know that there is one consumer here, this primary consumer elephant. This elephant really relies on acacia trees. Now, elephants also get their energy from stargrass. So if elephants are losing their acacia trees, if all of these got cut down and elephants didn't have any more acacia trees to eat, they would be relying more heavily on the grass. And if they eat more of the grass, well, that's going to affect the ants and the gazelles and the warthogs in some way as well. And it'll be a trickle down where everything is kind of affected by that. So you're supposed to answer that question. Good luck with your activity. Be sure once you've created your new food web, your temperate deciduous forest food web, to share it with your teachers and classmates on Google Classroom. You can share it with us as well. Just a reminder, those arrows go from what's giving the energy like this birthday cake to what's getting the energy like Miss Wanda. Stay safe and stay curious, guys, and we hope to hear from you soon.